Windows. I think it's these ones over there.
Is that better?
Yep.
Can we zoom? Is it possible to get a little larger on that? You got this one? We want this one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Makes it a little better.
So any better? Cool. I'm glad you're here to do this. Thanks. We should try to do this on the weekly, like to get slightly more dialed camera focus. All right. So, any weekend stuff to discuss? Anything left over from last week?
Man, you get a bottle of water real quickly.
Of course I don't care yet. So this carbon thing. I just want to make sure that we hit on all the terms that are in the carbon cycle on the board. Anything that we need to catch up with carbon cycling? Release, photoautotrophism, and chemoautotrophism. Oh, you guys are on the... You are on the news. Yeah, did you go to
Yeah.
Here's the backside. People can't give you what I was trying to say. Okay. Photo, chemoautotrophs, uptake, fixation, release, any of this, you ask now or forever hold your peace and fail in the exam. Yes?
Fixation again?
To make something chemically useful. It's a chemical reaction that has a useful product. Yes?
Uptake.
Is when something enters the biosphere from one of the other spheres. So like when you drink water and that becomes part of your cells, that was uptake. Like you walk up to a stream, that's not the biosphere at that point. You go, drink some water, and then now it's in you, that's uptake. Plants drink water, you breathe oxygen, all uptake. What else? Okay. One thing that I was hoping would kind of blow your mind, which I think nobody has, which I think few people have told you in the past, is this one, that photosynthesis is done exclusively by plants, and everybody talks about cellular respiration as being just animals, but I wanted to expand your horizons by telling you that cellular respiration is also done by plants during the nighttime. That's why they do photosynthesis, so that they can use their energy storage at night. Everybody got that? Then we had the changes to the biosphere. I want to remind you of a little factoid that I added about our atmosphere. That our fossil fuel glory, which has led to our airplanes and cars and all that awesomeness, has elevated carbon levels to about 150% of what they were in 1850. I want to remind you that deposition is usually done by water. I added that in. It's usually water. I also made examples of carbon sinks. Carbon sinks are usually places where material trickles into water, like a swamp or the bottom of the ocean or a deep sea trench or stuff like that. We talked about carbon sinks. Here's a fun fact. One gallon of gasoline is roughly 31,000 calories. So to put that in perspective, that $4 of liquid fuel is about 15 days of your basic metabolism. Like you can't find food for $4 for 15 days. Another way to say this is if I could feed you that gasoline, you could operate a bicycle at 15 miles an hour for 92 hours. Or you could run non-stop for roughly 60 hours. What is that, 2.5 days? Yeah, 2.5 days. The point is, there's a lot of carbon bonds here. Your dry weight is about 2/3 carbon. Carbon is like the foundation of all of life, and all of those living things, once you squeeze all the water out and you pack them together, it takes a lot of them to make fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are a lot of stored energy. So it made perfectly good sense that we would take advantage of that energy potential, whether it's a liquid fuel or a gas fuel or a solid fuel. The flip side of that is by finding all of that energy that hadn't been used recently, we've put all kinds of lithic carbon into the atmosphere. Very big changes for the atmosphere, because the atmosphere is relatively tiny compared to the rock of the Earth. So we really changed things in that little tiny layer of gases. Any questions on this carbon stuff? Because if you don't, I'm going to move on. Yes?
What's the P and the R again?
Products and reagents or reactants. So the things that go into the reaction and the things that come out of the reaction. Yes?
Can you repeat carbon thing again?
Yes, I can. A place where carbon has been removed from the biosphere. If this entire school campus was killed by a spontaneous gas leak, we're still biotic. We're dead, but worms will eat us and crows and rats will eat us. Do you agree with me? Yep. Yep. Now, imagine that this entire school was killed by a giant avalanche of like hundreds of feet of mudslide. Right? The rats can't get to us. The worms can't get to us. The crows can't reach our bodies, right? If it's like hundreds of feet of mud, we cannot dig our way out. We all just die down here in the mud. That would be a carbon sink. Because all of a sudden, all that carbon in our bodies is preserved in one place, and in a couple of gazillion years, that would probably be a little thin seam of coal. But that carbon has left the biosphere. It is not going to make butterflies and flowers anymore. There's no recycling once you bury it. That's a sink.
Thank you.
You feel me, dog? Yeah. Anybody else? Nobody else? We are done. Okay, well, get ready for your mind to be blown by the nitrogen cycle. Which BT dubs is actually 2 cycles now that we're at it. I sort of did it as an afterthought, but if you look in the blue, please look up. There's a little cycle. And also in blue, there's the big cycle. But remember, just copying the paper won't do you any good. So let me give you some instructions before you get started on your note-taking for today. Some things. Number 1, we're going to do 2 study goals together, 16 and 17. Number 2, it's all about the nitrogen cycle. Number 3, the best way to start your drawing is like you're outlining a lowercase n. Ever see that? The outline of a lowercase n? Like if I had a lowercase n, I just outlined it. Uh-oh, blowing up. We have a section that happens above ground and a section that happens below ground, so that's what this line means.
We should make that the whole page.
If I was you, I'd make this very, very large.
Okay.
Because you probably have a lot of commentary to write. So I would recommend making this very, very large. A couple of other comments about this. First of all, it's actually 2 cycles. Keep in mind that there's like 2 really separate things. Keep in mind, almost everything here is done by bacteria. Please look at my code. I have an orange marker that I've used on my diagram. You don't have as many colors, that's okay. You can use like the asterisk. I just want you to notice it now. I have used orange marker to show you where the bacteria is. Like all this stuff underground is done by bacteria, and also the gut of my scary looking rabbit. Yes, you can all judge me, but it is nerve-wracking to make drawings on the fly first draft every time. So it's almost all done by bacteria. 2 separate cycles. Some above ground, some below ground. I've thrown in a whole bunch of vocab. There's all these underlinings and whatnot. And I promise I can help you. First, everybody taking a big old breath. And get ready to hold it. Hold it. Big breath. Hold it. Right now your lungs are 71% nitrogen. You need this for life. All of your proteins, including your DNA and your muscles and whatnot. Now breathe out. There goes all your nitrogen. You did not take any in. Fun fact, it even dissolves into your blood. And then it leaves your blood useless. You can't breathe it. It's kind of funny. You know how, like, you can go scuba diving, but you can't drink the ocean? Like, you live in an atmosphere full of nitrogen, and that doesn't help you. It's like if you work at the counting room in a bank, that money that you're handling is not money that you take into your pockets, hopefully. So the nitrogen gas, please look up, we call that atmospheric nitrogen. Atmospheric nitrogen is known as N2, like buddy system, like two nitrogens together. It's 71% of the atmosphere. It's a macronutrient, absolutely critical to all life on Earth, and you can't use it as a gas. In this chemical form, it's no good to you. But there's some good news. Please look up. There's this type of bacteria out there called Nitrobacter. That's like the genus name. There's many species of Nitrobacter. And they do the fixing. Remember we said fixing is to make a reaction that makes it useful to life? Okay. Nitrogen fixation is when you take that gas and you make it into ammonium, and you have to know that that's called ammonium. It's also written right here, they turn gas into ammonium. That's an aerobic process, and this might be worth writing down somewhere. They don't do it for the nitrogen. Like, that's how they breathe, and the ammonium is like their waste product. Like, they don't. This has nothing to do with their digestion. It's like when you, like, open a bag of chips and you eat the chips and you throw away the wrapper. Like, this is like throwing away the wrapper for them. Like, this is just how they get their digestion of something else. I'm going to come back. I want to go over that, but are there any questions about what I said so far? Yeah?
What are the bacteria called again?
Nitrobacter, or nitrogen-fixing bacteria. So like you're like a two-legged mammal that we call a human, nitrogen-fixing bacteria, and your actual species is Homo sapiens. Those are Nitrobacter, many species. Yes? These are found in soil, root nodules, and water. So like in lakes, in the ocean, in streams. I will explain root nodules in a minute. I know that this is like the biggest undertaking in the history of note-taking. This only happens like maybe once or twice per unit, but that's why I'm doing this in class, because this is guaranteed to be on the AP test, and I've explained this like 60,000 times, and I think I'm better at it than your book. Yeah?
That's above the 4 in the ammonium, the 2.
It's a little less than. Because technically, if you speak chemistry, ammonium is an ion of ammonia. And if you don't speak chemistry, just write that. So I want to redo what I just said in case anybody's curious. You may want to watch this part, so I'll take another break for you to write. Watch. Nitrogen gas, everywhere in the atmosphere, you breathe it in, useless to us. There's this type of bacteria that uses this, if you're curious, this is how the bacteria breathes. They tear oxygen out of water and they stick the hydrogens onto nitrogen as like a waste product. This is how they dump off hydrogens. So they stick the hydrogen onto the nitrogen. It's just like a separate thing that they do. And that nitrogen-fixing bacteria, Nitrobacter species, is aerobic, turns gas into ammonium, found in soil, root nodules, and water. get too confused, please look over here. Remember that the plant does carbon fixation. It goes from gas that's not very useful into glucose, this. Likewise, nitrogen gas is not very useful, but fixation is the process of doing the chemistry that makes it into a useful form, ammonia. Here's a fun fact for you, not on there. Have any of you heard about a horrific terrorist attack in the United States in Oklahoma City, where the FBI building, the federal building, was blown up? The headquarters of the FBI was blown up by an American terrorist. I think his name was Timothy McVeigh.
Yeah.
He used huge 40-pound bags of ammonium, which is highly reactive. So you take like a van full of fertilizer and you do some fancy plumbing and other stuff I don't understand, and then you hit the thing and it goes bang. So anyway, you can't buy ammonium in large volumes anymore. Yeah?
What's aerobic?
Aerobic means there's air around. So usually any reaction that adds oxygen is considered an aerobic reaction because that oxygen has to come from somewhere. So you see how like this one is adding oxygens, that's an aerobic reaction. And this one is peeling off oxygens, so that's anaerobic. If there's air involved, it's aerobic. So these are not balanced reactions. There's also water in this side. Yeah?
So does the bacteria actually need air, or can they just use the oxygen from water?
I wish I understood better, and if you can answer that for me, I'd appreciate it. I really don't know. I've heard it's an aerobic reaction. I've heard that nitrogen-fixing bacteria likes fluffy soil. I think that they like fluffy soil because that's how they get the nitrogen gas. Yeah. But I think also oxygen, but I'm not too smart. You know, bacterial metabolism is like a pretty cool thing that I've just honestly never learned enough. Okay. So, now that your nitrogen is in a chemical form that plants can use, let's go this way, and they will assimilate, in other words, take up the ammonium. This is how plants build proteins. Assimilation is the uptake of nitrogen in a fixed form. So plants drink it out of the ground, and please you look up, they'll use it to build proteins. You should remember that. I think that was in your study goal number 6 or number 9 or something. Man, this is such a dense lecture. Don't you feel bad for the kids that aren't here today? There's like 3 kids missing in period 1. Oh, man. Now, fun fact about this. You should put down your pencil for a minute. Does everybody know that amino acids are used to assemble proteins? You all heard that? Like in bio and stuff? There's like the essential amino acids, the ones that are used by the building blocks of life. Yeah? Okay. And does everybody know that some plant has a lot of protein compared to other plants? So anybody here a vegetarian? Or have ever been a vegetarian? What vegetable food are you supposed to eat to get a lot of protein. If you don't eat meat, you're supposed to eat a lot of soy and other beans. Anybody heard that? Legumes have a lot of protein. Beans have a lot of protein. Here's why. Beans are a group of plants that have these special things in their roots called nodules. They provide a home for that bacteria. So the bacteria will give them more ammonium. It's like if you have a little house on the side for a chef, then the chef will be probably available to cook you more food. These plants, they have little like chef quarters. So the bacteria can give them more ammonium. So I'll tell you another fun secret. Down in my garden, we grow plants that have a lot of this stuff, and before they can use it, we kill them and rototill them back into the soil so that our soil has a whole bunch of ammonium naturally. Instead of buying fertilizer, we grow plants that increase the bacteria load, and then we slaughter them and cycle them into the dirt, and that's how we make fertilizer for our garden. People call them nitrogen-fixing crops, but it's not the crop. The crop just has a lot of the bacteria. Yeah?
Is that sort of the same idea as composting, like taking all the used stuff?
We'll come back to that. I mean, yeah, it's the same idea in the sense that like biotic materials recycled.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a special type of composting. We compost crops that have a lot of the bacteria that makes a lot of the extra nitrogen. Anybody else? Okay, so some plants have little nodules where they keep that bacteria. It's good for them because the bacteria have a place to live, and it's good for the plants because the bacteria make ammonium for the plants. Now, plant makes protein for plant stuff. Plant's not trying to help anybody else. But sometimes big, scary, ugly rabbits will eat that plant. Yeah, I thought my rabbit was ugly, and then I looked out into the room during period 1, and I felt much better about myself. I was like, oh, that's ugly, bro. Okay, that rabbit will do the same thing that you do when you eat vegetables or when you eat other animals. Same thing. It's called digestion, where you break up proteins and you make the ones you need and you get rid of the ones you don't. Am I confusing people? Am I going too fast? So look, Jose eats venison. Inside my gut, we break up the venison protein into the amino acids. Those amino acids go thump, 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 and cycle throughout my blood, and all of my cells say, oh, I need this to make DNA, or, oh, I need this to make whatever Jose stuff, or I need these to make muscles, which I have so many of. And then my body goes, does anybody need this? Nobody needs it? And it goes, and we get rid of it. First of all that digestion, you guys notice how I broke those pens apart from each other? That's actually done by bacteria. You should know that there's bacteria that live in your gut. They do all that work for you. You can't do it without them. When you take antibiotics, you get diarrhea. Because when you've killed off the bacteria in your gut, you're not digesting your food as well. And they're having like this warfare to figure out who's going to take over your stomach. Or your intestines, anyway. So watch here. Please look up. Please look up. Please look up. when one of us eats each other, or we eat a flower, or the rabbit eats a plant, or whatever, when we consume things, we digest the amino acids into our food, into the ones that we need, and then we get rid of the ones that we don't as poo. And that poo will decompose. So the amino acids are ammonified, ammonification, into nitrate again. And I'm about to blow your mind, so please make sure that you're done with that. Even if it didn't make sense, just write all that down. So when you're done writing, I want a Badinsky, but I want to make sure you're done writing. All right, now the plant assimilated ammonium to make its proteins. The rabbit ate those proteins and turned them into rabbit proteins plus leftovers. Those leftovers were decomposed into ammonium. And here things might get kind of fuzzy. And this is why I want everybody to stop your writing. This is the part where all the students go, wait, what, bro? And this is like the critical step where all of you need to snap out of it. Wake up. Stay with me. Here it comes. There are basically two nitrogen cycles. One of them is the little cycle, where ammonium goes into plant, animals, and you all know that poop is fertilizer, right? You can like fertilize plants with poop. You guys aware of that? Chicken manure and horse manure and whatnot. So that poop decomposes into ammonium, which can, as you know, go right back into plant. So like the farmer feeds the leftovers to the pig, and then the pig poo goes back into the farm to help the plants grow, right? That's this one, the little cycle. And watch me very carefully. Ammonium, amino acids, reassembled. By the way, reassembled into the wolf, reassembled into whatever. Poop, ammonium, amino acids, poop, ammonium, amino acids. This is called the little cycle. And the little cycle is just the, part that you're familiar with from farming and ranching and old McDonald's farmhouse. But there's a separate thing called the big cycle. And these kind of happen at the same time, and they have a little overlap in the middle. Check it out. I have this other book. Not your textbook, another textbook. Look how they do the nitrogen cycle. A big loop, and then a little one inside it. So there's the big one, and then there's the little one inside it. Some of that ammonium, plant, animal, plant, animal, plant, animal, plant, animal. Some of this ammonium is used by other types of bacteria. There are many bacteria in this process. There's the nitrogen fixers, the digesters, the decomposers, the nitrification bacteria, and finally the denitrification bacteria. Some of them use air to peel off the hydrogen and add on oxygen. Some of them are anaerobic, so they need that oxygen, and their byproduct is the nitrogen gas in the atmosphere. This, please look up, just so I know you can't read this. I wrote it small because I wanted to be the only one who says it. This is a two-way street, like a nitrogen shortcut. It can be in the big cycle or it can be in the little cycle. The ammonium can go both ways, back into plants or this way to go into the atmosphere through these other bacteria.
What's the top say?
Top of what? Where?
Of the little tiny.
Two-way street.
What is the opposite?
Nitrogen shortcut. By shortcut, I mean that can get right back into plants. You know, the poop can go back to the plant. Yeah,
Anaerobic is no air.
correct. So you'll notice that in that reaction, the bacteria are peeling out oxygen. That's how they get their. Yeah.
So what happens during nitrification again?
Nitrification is the step of transforming ammonium into nitrate. And look, like, if it was up to me, I wouldn't bother with all of those steps. I would just tell you, there's a bunch of different bacteria that shuffle nitrogen. And that would be me. But for some reason, the College Board feels you got to know these terms, so I'm going to hit you with them and I'm going to test you on them because I got to get you ready for the AP test. This is one of those parts where, frankly, I think it's kind of trivia. Like, I could get even more trivial and give you the whole balanced reaction, right? But, like, I don't think that this necessarily helps except it gets you ready for the AP test and my test. Yeah?
What is N0?
Nitrate. Yes?
What's
NH4 is ammonium. If you speak chemistry, it's the ionic form of ammonia. It's the ammonia that's dissolved into water.
And what is N2?
Nitrogen gas, atmospheric nitrogen. Some people call it diatomic. I've got good news and I've got bad news. Which do you want first? The bad news?
Yeah.
That's all the explanation I have for you. So good news, we're done with class, but bad news, you gotta ask me and I can fill you in to help out however you need. Yeah,
What does it say in the rabbit again?
that's digestion. That's the same thing that happens inside of you, and if that rabbit got eaten by a wolf, that's what's happening in the wolf. That's when you break apart proteins into all of the amino acids, and you'll keep some and get rid of the rest. Yeah.
Can you explain nitrification again?
So, this is not your definition to copy down. This is just conceptual. Nitrogen fixation, nitrification, and denitrification. All three of those. They're just part of this bacteria's metabolism. Each bacteria has a different metabolic thing, right? The point of eating for us is not the poop, but the pooping is like a byproduct of the fact that we got to run our bodies and do all that other stuff. Agreed? Okay, so these bacteria, as part of their bacteria life, like making bacteria babies and reading the bacteria newspaper and going to the bacteria office and stuff, they absorb one form of nitrogen and they give off a different form. So because there are different types of bacteria in different places, they have different names. Nitrification is when they eat the ammonia and make nitrate. That's just a name for that process. That happens in one of the bacteria types. That's why it's got the asterisk there in orange. And denitrification is this other bacterial byproduct phase where they eat nitrate and they fart out little bubbles of nitrogen gas. He is?
I know you said it, but what was the N0 minus 3?
That's nitrate. Yes?
What does it say under digestion in the rabbit?
Then it says amino acids into other amino acids. In other words, we don't really dissolve proteins, we just rearrange them. It's like you take apart one Lego and you build your new Lego and you get rid of the pieces you didn't need. Yes?
So since the root node jewels don't have an asterisk, they don't involve bacteria?
They are the home for bacteria, but they're a part of the plant. So this is one of those really confusing details. That's a really important detail that everybody here should know. There are plants who provide a home for bacteria. The plants are special because they have a lot of bacteria. So they get a lot of nitrogen. The actual nitrogen chemistry is done by the bacteria that live in their roots. Feel me, dog? Yep.
And more bacteria means more protein.
Yeah, right. So because those plants have like this huge population of captive bacteria that they can just suck up nitrate like crazy, they own a fertilizer factory. So coincidentally, those are the plants that we eat for their elevated protein levels. Yes?
For number 17, that's all the other questions that we just have to answer from.
But I'll bet you if you ask them, we have them here. I think if you have other questions in 17, I'll bet you they're on the board. Tell me what they are.
How does molecular nitrogen enter the cycle?
So molecular means atmospheric or gas. So through nitrogen fixation. What else?
What are other sources of ammonia?
So there's nitrogen fixation and also decomposing poop. And by the way, I guess when rabbits decompose, that also makes ammonia. Like all decomposition makes some amount of ammonia. What else?
How is nitrogen used by living plants?
Take proteins. Was that it?
And how does it get back into the atmosphere?
The left side of the whiteboard. So the denitrification.
What was the answer to how does molecular nitrogen enter the cycle?
That was fixation. Nitrogen fixing bacteria. Because here where it says atmospheric, I could also say molecular. That's the gas. I'm glad that you're all asking questions. I'm just here to help you. And this is like one of my least favorite classes because I'm not saying that there's a point to this and there's like no purpose or reason. It's just really critical that you understand the steps of nitrogen moving through our planet. And we talk about this a lot in my class. If you guys want some fun facts, how many of you have seen a wet-dry filter under an aquarium? They're like a big clear box with like water pouring over little pellets. Anybody ever seen that? So someday I can show you. I've got one sitting on the bottom over there. Actually, Sam, will you get that out for me? This might be a fun story. I see my pencil. Idiot. It's kind of heavy. You got this, bro? Yeah. Okay. So, first of all, does anybody know that you're supposed to, like, change the water on a fish tank sometimes?
Yeah.
Because, like, if you don't, anybody know what happens? Watch your head. Anybody know what happens if you don't change the water in your fish tank?
They die.
The fish die? Because they're drowning in what?
Bacteria?
No, they're drowning in their fish poop. Their like gills turn all red and bloody because they're like choking on ammonium. So watch. In my aquarium, fish are eating, and when they're eating, they're also pooping. and all that poop ammonifies into ammonium, which is deadly. In case you don't believe me, Windex is ammonium, and you can read the label. It says, do not consume. Ammonium is very deadly. So watch. The way that this thing works is water comes pouring out of the aquarium, and it trickles over these pellets, which have like a ton of surface area. Those pellets, with all their surface area, are covered in aerobic bacteria. You see, the water level in this box is right there. That's water level. So these things are getting wet, but they're still in the air. So they get plenty of oxygen. So they can do this step. Then the anaerobic bacteria lives in the water because there's no air underwater. Y'all realize that? And so your aquarium will off-gas nitrogen gas. Because you've provided an aerobic environment where the water trickles over these beads, you're culturing a colony of bacteria to turn the ammonium into nitrate, so all the other bacteria in the water can turn the nitrate into nitrogen gas, and your fish don't drown in their own waste.
So in principle, would you be able to grow like bean plants? Actually, never mind that.
Yeah, if you got rid of this,
Yeah.
you could grow plants in the aquarium as well, and the plants will suck up the nitrate. Yeah. That's an aquaponics system, by the way. Aquaponics don't require filters because the plants are sucking out the ammonia. That was fun. Who else? Yes?
For tomorrow, when he wants to turn this in, he wants to turn in this chart. Do you want us to answer the questions?
Well, remember that your homework is your notes. So as long as you've answered all of those questions to your satisfaction in your notes, that's what you turn in. I also want to remind you that there's other study goals in this assignment, not just these four. Yes?
Asking about other sources of ammonium, what are they?
One of them is nitrogen-fixing bacteria. The other one is the decomposing poop. And by the way, decomposing stuff. Like if my body's left to rot, that's going to have a lot of ammonium underneath me. You could use a carcass as fertilizer too. Okay, I'm getting ready to call it quits here. Yes?
Under it says decomposer, and it says, what's
That says decompose underneath the rabbit. And then it says ammonification. It says amino acids into ammonia.
For the articles, for example, like 4, should we read all of them like super thoroughly or just skip them?
In this one, I would just make sure that you can identify for number 19 which ones are all, like what makes them keystones. There's some pretty weird ones in there. Like the desert rat one, the kangaroo rat. That's a pretty amazing keystone. And so you just want to understand why they're so critical, like what's their irreplaceable function. And that's all you need. But sometimes you have to read a lot for that. Sometimes it's really obvious. For number 20, I can't remember what that question was about. Oh, I think it's about the missing carbon. That one I would read pretty carefully. Still available to you. Are you dying back there?
Yeah.
Will you go die outside, please? Do you need more water or something?
No, I'm good.
I was just kidding about dying outside. I mean, you're welcome to go outside if you want some fresh air, but are you okay? So I guess I'm done with this content. Period 2 is just so on it.